What if Monkey D. Luffy had eaten the Yami Yami no Mi, the Darkness fruit, instead of the Gum Gum fruit? Not Blackbeard's fruit. Luffy's fruit. The most terrifying power in the One Piece world handed to the most fearless soul who ever lived. Let that sink in for a second. Because this isn't just a fun swap. This changes everything. The entire story, the entire power system, the entire personality of the Straw Hat Pirates shifts the moment that darkness swallows the light. Let's go back to Fuchsia Village. Same scene, same barrel. But instead of the Gomu Gomu no Mi sitting inside, it's the Yami Yami no Mi. Shanks loses the fruit to the mountain bandits. Young Luffy, curious and reckless as always, eats it before anyone can stop him. And just like that, the boy who would be king of the pirates becomes a vessel for the most oppressive force in existence. Now here's where it gets interesting. The Yami Yami no Mi is unique because it actively makes its user weaker to damage. No rubber body absorbing impacts, no elasticity to stretch out of danger. Luffy would feel every single hit with amplified pain. Every punch, every slash, every explosion, twice as devastating. For any other person, that's a death sentence. But for Luffy? For someone who laughed through Arlong's torture chamber, who got back up after Kuma blasted him repeatedly at Sabaody, who stood against Kaido knowing he'd lose. The amplified pain barely registers as a problem. Luffy's willpower isn't a narrative convenience. It's been proven arc after arc. He would adapt, he would endure, and he would weaponize the darkness in ways Blackbeard never dreamed of. Because here's what the Yami Yami no Mi actually does. It generates a gravitational darkness that pulls everything in, nullifies other devil fruit powers on contact, and at full output can collapse the world around its user into a black void. Blackbeard used it to destroy Marineford's infrastructure in seconds. He used it to negate Whitebeard's Gura Gura no Mai tremors mid-battle. The fruit's true ability isn't just darkness. It's the negation of all devil fruit power. It is the ultimate counter in a world defined by devil fruits. Now put that ability in Luffy's hands. Luffy, who fights with instinct and emotion rather than strategy. Luffy, who charges forward regardless of the threat level. Imagine him at Arlong Park, grabbing Arlong mid-attack and watching the fishman's enhanced strength suddenly mean nothing. Imagine him at Alabasta, reaching for Crocodile's sand body and actually making contact, nullifying the Sunasuna no Mi entirely. That fight doesn't last 5 rounds. It lasts 5 seconds. Every devil fruit villain Luffy ever struggled against, Enel, Rob Lucci, Doflamingo, the moment darkness touches them, their powers disappear. The rubber boy who lost to Crocodile twice before finding a workaround becomes a darkness user who neutralizes Crocodile on the first attempt. But the story changes in ways beyond just combat. Think about who Luffy becomes emotionally. The Gomu Gomu no Mi shaped Luffy's personality as much as his body, his elasticity, his playfulness, his gear transformations. They reflected who he was. Boundless, unpredictable, joyful. The darkness fruit carries a completely different energy. It's oppressive, consuming, relentless, and yet Luffy's core would remain unchanged. Because the fruit doesn't define the man. Shanks saw that. Ace saw that. The crew would still follow him because Luffy's draw was never about his powers. It was about who he is. Still, the dynamic of the crew shifts. Zoro can't play the role of the one who takes Luffy's pain anymore. Because Luffy's pain is already amplified and Luffy accepts it without complaint. The crew becomes more protective, more aware of how fragile and simultaneously unstoppable their captain is. Nami reads it in his eyes. Chopper monitors him after every major battle. There's a new weight to the adventure that the rubber body never carried. And then we reach the turning point, Marineford. Because this is where the Yami Yami no Mi in Luffy's hands becomes genuinely world-altering. In the original story, Luffy's role at Marineford was emotional. He broke through on sheer willpower and Conqueror's haki. But with the Darkness Fruit, Luffy doesn't just run through the battlefield. He pulls it apart. Every Marine in his path loses their Devil Fruit abilities the moment darkness reaches them. Admirals Aokiji, Kizaru, Akainu. Their Logia invulnerability disappears on contact. The battle that killed Ace in the original timeline becomes something else entirely. Because Luffy with darkness can reach Ace, he can nullify the Sea Prism restraint's reliance on nearby powers. He can grab Akainu and strip the magma right out of the equation. Ace might live, and if Ace lives, the entire final saga reshapes itself. Blackbeard's rise is slower. Whitebeard's legacy survives through a different path. The balance of power in the New World doesn't collapse the same way. The 4 emperors remain 4, not 3, with a sudden dark horse ascending. And what about Blackbeard himself? Because here's the real question the lore demands we ask. If Luffy has the Yami Yami no Mi, Blackbeard doesn't. Which means Teach never gets his fruit, never kills Thatch, never escapes Impel Down with level 6 prisoners. The entire Blackbeard Pirates organization is crippled before it begins. The man who destabilized the world order in the original timeline simply never becomes the threat he was. That vacuum gets filled by someone else, or by chaos itself. But the specific nightmare that was Marshall D. Teach ascending to Yonko status, gone. Luffy's endgame also transforms completely. The Gomu Gomu no Mi was secretly the Hito Hito no Mi model, Nika, the Sun God's fruit, tied to the Joy Boy prophecy and the liberation of the world. That revelation in Wano recontextualizes everything. Without it, Luffy doesn't become Gear 5. He doesn't access the Warrior of Liberation transformation. The ancient prophecy of Joy Boy doesn't manifest through him the same way. But the Yami Yami no Mi has its own ancient gravity. It was the fruit Blackbeard waited his entire life for, the fruit he believed destiny owed him. What does it mean when the universe's most oppressive power is held by the freest soul alive? Maybe that's the deeper answer. Maybe Luffy with the darkness fruit isn't a tragedy or a power downgrade. Maybe it's the most complete inversion of what that power was ever meant to be. Blackbeard used darkness to consume, to take, to destroy. Luffy would use it to protect, to pull his crew close, to swallow the world's cruelty so it couldn't touch the people he loves. The darkness in Luffy's hands doesn't become a force of domination. It becomes a shield made of everything the world tried to impose on him, turned back outward. That's the version of Luffy who still reaches Laugh Tale, who still becomes king of the pirates. Not because the fruit made him powerful, but because no fruit, dark or rubber, ever defined what Monkey D. Luffy truly is. So here's the question worth sitting with. Does the Yami Yami no Mi make Luffy more dangerous than Gear 5 ever did, or does it rob the world of its single greatest symbol of freedom?